a holistic approach to kidney well-being. So, doctor, I'm going to hand over to you, and please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, from wherever you're joining us. I'm Dr. Gloria Obokoya Haya. I'm a medical doctor. Got my MBBS from the University of Jos. I have a master's in public health from the Liverpool John Moore University in Liverpool. Married with a kid. I do work in general surgery as a looking doctor. I'm a public health expert as well. I'll just be discussing um, faith, food, and function as our lovely host, Ms. Olga, has said. I'll just talk about how there's an interplay between the food we eat, the function of our kidneys, and how our faith commands us to take care of our body as a whole. So I will try as much as possible not to bore us with so much medical terminology, keep it as simple as possible. And I believe there's space for questions at the end of the session. So I'll be discussing first of all, just talk about the function of the kidneys, just a little overview of how the kidney works, what they do. I'll then talk about how nutrition is important, what we should avoid, what we should ingest to optimize kidney health, how faith comes in, and then I'll just summarize everything together at the end. So I know all of us must have heard about the kidneys. A very important organ in the body, retroperitoneal, and it's located in the lower abdomen. So that just means it can be found towards the back of the lower abdomen. Usually, most people are born with two kidneys, but some people sometimes might be born with one and are able to survive surprisingly with one kidney. And the kidney is important because it's one of the end organs in the body. An end organ is just an organ that usually bears the brunt of disease. If there's like chronic or progressive disease, it's affected by such disease. So an important organ affected by chronic or progressive disease, an end organ. So the kidneys are part of the end organs alongside the heart, the brain, and the rest of them. So usually a normal kidney about 11 to 14 centimeter in length. Most people, like I said, have two, but you can survive on one. The left slightly bigger than the right in most people. There's usually like just a slight disparity between two, and that's not seen as that's not looked upon as a pathology. So except it's like a lot of difference between both of them. Okay. So how the kidney works, basically speaking, is that it filters blood, gets rid of waste from the body, excretes the waste, and then sends back the clean blood, if I'll put it so, back into the body. So it uses what is called the nephrons, tiny units inside the kidney, filtering the blood. So it's a mini filtering system, filters the blood, blood enters the kidney from the renal artery, flows, goes past through the glomerulus, filters waste products, excess fluid, um, molecules, protein, just goes through everything to make sure that your bloodstream is as clean as possible. Goes out of the renal vein and then goes into the vena cava. So the body then takes it back, clean blood. And then excess acid or waste is then sent out and transported to the bladder. Urine is formed, sent to the bladder. Bladder stores till when it's kind of full, signals are sent to the brain, and then urine flows out. We then go use the toilet. Okay. So normal kidney function. So if you go to the hospital and they tell you, oh, want to have a look at your kidneys, want to maybe take some blood to check your kidneys, you have them checking for things like creatinine, urea, and electrolytes. So in medical terminology, they say EUCR. So when they're looking at your kidneys. So these are just waste products that are gotten when the kidney filters the blood. So if you see these things in very high amounts in the blood, you start to ask questions. It would appear that the kidney is not working as it is supposed to. Okay. So the normal EGFR, that's the glomerular filtration rate, is usually 90. It does vary. If you get older, the way your kidneys work as is expected, it's kind of slows down a bit. Okay. So the kidney is important because blood pressure regulation is done mainly by the kidneys. It manages fluid volume, that's the amount of blood and fluid that is in the body. If the pressure is kind of high, the blood pressure is high, what kidney does is that it excretes sodium, takes out water. So less pressure means less fluid means less pressure, okay? And vice versa. So blood pressure is low, sodium and water are retained, and then there's more fluid, translates to more pressure, and that helps to stabilize things, okay? Also, it releases hormones. So these hormones cause vasoconstriction or vessel constriction. That's just reduces the size, the circumference of the vessel, and also fluid balance. So if blood pressure drops, the kidneys release some hormones, renin. I'm not going to bore us with that. Angiotensin 2, aldosterone, all of these, there's just an interplay between these hormones to make sure that your body, the blood volume that you have is okay and is clean. Your blood is clean, in quotes. Okay. Okay. So, like I've said, roles of the kidney in the body: waste filtration, filters waste products, toxins, just to maintain body health. So, the chances of one having waste products or byproducts in the body retained by the body are very slim if your kidney is functioning as it ought to. Okay. It also balances electrolytes, so different electrolytes, to make sure that they are not too much or too little, just the right amount that your body needs. Another thing that's important to note that the kidney does or handles is red blood cell production. Okay, so healthy kidneys produce what we call erythropoietin. So erythropoietin is just a hormone that helps to tell the bone marrow that we need new red blood cells. Okay, so if the kidney senses that, oh, new red blood cells are needed, erythropoietin is released, the bone marrow picks up the signals that, oh, it's as though the body does not have enough red blood cells or needs new ones. And then new red blood cells are produced in the bone marrow and then sent out. Okay, that's why it's not surprising to see people with kidney disease. They might have some anemia, excuse me, they might have some anemia. The red blood cells might not be produced as they ought to. Okay. So we would want to discuss risk factors for kidney disease. Most of what I'll be talking about is preventive medicine. Public health mainly is about mainly preventive medicine. Okay. What to do to not get to that point of having to need medication, having to need treatment or dialysis or renal transplant if it comes to that. Okay, so for us to be able to do that, we need to talk about the risk factors, the things that make us prone to developing kidney disease. Okay, so we have risk factors such as chronic diseases. So if you have an individual with diabetes, high blood sugar, what happens is that it damages the kidney, especially over a long period of time. So you would have someone that is having diabetes or high blood sugar. Little by little, the kidneys start to leak proteins. Instead of filtering the blood as it ought to, it starts to leak proteins and it becomes less effective. Okay, so this is usually called diabetic nephropathy. Nephro is the kidneys, pathy means disease. Okay, so disease of the kidneys, diabetic nephropathy. So you'd see that in diabetics. So you'd hear your doctor, if you are diabetic, you'd hear your doctor say, we need to keep a tight control on your glucose because of your kidneys, especially if that is going side by side with your blood pressure being high. So it's something that has to be tightly controlled. Okay, so bringing us to hypertension. This is like the one that is very, very common. High blood pressure. The pressure is too high, the kidneys are damaged. It's not able to filter as it ought to. Blood vessels are damaged because the pressure is too much for the blood vessel. So you have a blood vessel, maybe having a circumference like this, and you have something pounding on it with so much force. Before you know it, it starts to harden, it starts to narrow, starts to constrict, okay? And fluid starts to build up. Why this is bad is that it's just like a vicious cycle, a negative vicious cycle. What that means is that if you have high blood pressure, the pressure becomes too much for the kidneys to handle, starts to damage the kidneys, and then a poorly functioning kidney is not able to pass the fluid as it ought to be. It's not able to circulate the fluid as it ought to be, leading to higher blood pressure. So the amount of fluid that's supposed to leave the body is not leaving. The blood pressure or the blood volume is getting higher. So it's just a vicious cycle. Bad kidneys, higher blood pressure, back to bad kidneys. Okay. Then family history. So there are some people that have some genes, they are hereditary kidney diseases. I think the most prominent would be polycystic kidney disease, a disease in which there are cysts located all around the kidneys. Okay. So polycystic kidney disease, I think there's Alport syndrome, Alport with all of that. There are quite a number of others, but polycystic kidney disease is like the most common of them. So if one does have these genes or has kidney disease running in the family, there's a higher risk of kidney disease happening to that person. So we are saying all of these things so that early detection is possible. We're able to have a look at our kidneys. We know what to do, and then we help ourselves in the long run. So early signs of kidney disease. What might you have? I just want to put this disclaimer: signs and symptoms might point to an array of diseases. Okay, but I'll just be picking a few that may signal kidney disease. If you have body swelling, so remember we said that the kidney, what it does is that it takes out waste products. But if the body is retaining these waste products, retaining sodium, retaining water, it manifests as swelling. So you might have facial swelling, might have pedal swelling. Pedal swelling is also seen in heart failure, but it's more common in like kidney disease. You have the person, if the kidneys are getting so bad, if it's chronic kidney disease, you might have what we call anasaka. That's just like generalized body swelling. The body is kind of overwhelmed and can't handle it. They might have that. Flank pain. Remember, I talked about the position of the kidneys just by the sides of the abdomen, the two sides, and it's kind of towards the back. So the person might complain of flank pain, or discolored urine. If the kidney is not functioning as it ought to, they have urine that is probably like they call it coke-colored urine, so a darker colored urine because the kidney is leaking. If I'll put it that way, it's not filtering as it ought to. So all this can signify, of course, not in isolation, but can signify that there might be a problem with kidneys. So having said all of this, I think we've laid like a little foundation to discuss the principles of kidney wellness. Just discussing the principles of kidney wellness. So I would say what we are to eat, what we eat or what we ingest, we shouldn't be taking anything that should put unnecessary pressure on our kidneys. Amount of water or fluid that we take in. So adequate hydration, very important, can't be overemphasized when it comes to kidney health. If we also manage chronic conditions properly, such as blood sugar or our blood pressure, if we manage these conditions properly, our kidney is less exposed, okay, to toxins, less exposed to progressive damage. Yeah. And regular health checkups. So if you are not feeling too well and you have probably like an annual screening or you have a doctor's appointment, you are encouraged to keep all of this. So for nutrition, I would start from salt intake. I know nearly all of us do use salt. And it's very important to stress that much salt is not good for the kidneys. The recommended daily allowance, I think, would be around 6 grams, if I'm not mistaken. It would be 6 grams. It should not be more than 6 grams. The lesser, the better. Okay. So, why this can be a little tricky is that even in the grocery stores or in the supermarkets, the food that we buy most times is pre-salted. What that means is that salt is already being added to what you are buying. Remember, you've not taken it home, you've not even cooked it, nothing like that has been done. Already there's salt in what you are buying. Okay. When you come home, you also want to salt your food. Say, oh, let me give it some little taste. As you're putting it in the pot, searing, you are still adding salt. Okay, so there are many hidden ways in which salt can just get much in our diet, creep up on us without us knowing. And some of us have the awful habit of sprinkling salt on the table. We have these little salt shakers and then we just go with it. Oh, it still needs some more salt. So remember, there's salt already coming from food. There's food that is raw. There's salt that is coming from you cooking, and then there's salt at the end you might want to sprinkle at the table, which is not encouraged, by the way. So this is why we should be very cautious with our salt intake. So 6 grams, I think, roughly up is about a teaspoon, just a teaspoon of salt for the whole day. Mm. I know it's quite tricky, but we need to really help ourselves by lowering the amount of salt we have or we use daily. Salt is hidden in processed foods, lots of processed foods, olives, cheese, curry paste, smoked fish. I know there are a number of Nigerians. I'm Nigerian as well. There are a number of Nigerians here on the call. We do love smoked fish, especially for our soups. Smoked fish is usually salted. That's just part of the process. They salt it and then it is smoked. Okay. So all of these things have a way of getting the salt in our system increased. So there are many ways for salt to get in. So we need to watch out so our salt intake is not that much. Increased salt intake leads to higher risk of, we know this, cardiovascular disease, stroke, kidney problems, like I've mentioned, diabetes. So the list is very long. The less salt, the better. That's the general rule. So, and it's something that can help you in store is that when you go shopping, there's the amber system. So what that means is that on each of the goods that you are buying, you see the color codes of the major nutrients in these foods. The salt, the fat content, the sugar content. Red is for high, orange or yellow is for medium, and green is low. Okay, so you might want to, when you go in shopping, have a look at these things. It won't take just a few seconds. If you see everything in red, you know that's not something you should be buying. And if you are buying it, it will just be maybe once in a blue moon. You don't want to make that part of your diet, like your regular diet. So that helps in cutting down the things that we buy that are like very salty. So you'd say, Dr. Glory, if we're not putting salt in our food, how are we going to get flavor? I mean, the food has to taste good. So what I would advise is go just have a go at herbs and spices, lemon, black pepper, garlic, turmeric, cumin. Explore with spices, such that when you add your salt, you have other things coming in to give a bolder flavor to the food without having so much salt in it. Okay, so explore with your spices. We've talked about limiting the amount of salt that you put in when you are cooking, checking food labels. There are also some low salt variety of foods. So you have low salt pasta sauce, low salt baked beans. Have a look at the labels. Go for those variety, not just the normal ones. So you see it boldly written on the cans or the containers. That can help to cut down your salt intake.
So if you're buying tinned fish, those of us that love mackerel, those of us that love Titus, they'll say it's fish in brine. That's fish in salt water. What we advise is go for fish in water or fish in oil. That's just slightly better. So we are finding different ways anyway to just cut down the amount of salt here that is getting into your body. If you're snacking, fruits and vegetables are the go-to option rather than like very salty crackers, which most of us tend to snack on. Okay. So next we'll be talking about hydration and its impact on kidney function. We've discussed a little about salt intake. Hydration, we need to take a good amount of water. I think the recommended is about 1.5 to 2 liters daily. Okay, why this is important is that it supports waste removal. The kidneys are able to function properly, send out the waste from the system, prevent kidney stones. Okay, so this helps to prevent kidney stones if you are keeping yourself very, very hydrated. Okay, so this helps to prevent kidney stones. 1.5 to 2 liters per day. This is what we recommend. It's hard to get the amount of water if you are not intentional about it. So what we say is get yourself a bottle that's about 2 liters, fill it up in the morning, keep sipping throughout the day. Towards the end of the day, there's a high chance that you would have had the amount of water that you ought to. Okay, so drink more water. You can get some teas, so like green tea, like some Twinings, I know does good green tea. Okay, so you could do Twinings, get some green tea, just little coffee. We are not really we're not really encouraging so much coffee intake, but anything to get water into your system, but not so much salt and sugar at the same time. Which brings me to the next point. Avoid smoothies and all these, except these homemade smoothies. But you know, all those store-bought smoothies and juices, yes, they do have water, but they have an insane amount of sugar in them. So it's like it's counteractive. It's just simply counteractive. So we say limit those. And if you're tired of just taking water or you find the taste too boring on your palate, what you can do is to flavor your water with fruits. So slices of lemon, slices of orange in your water just gives that hint, that fruity tinge to your water, and that may help with water intake. Avoid fizzy drinks. I know we all know this. Fizzy drinks they are not it at all. Just so much sugar, empty calories. Avoid fizzy drink or pop, as they say. Increased weight, they really don't do much for us. As much as possible, do avoid. The next will be balanced meals. So when you are eating food, you'd want food that is going to help your kidneys or food that is going to reduce the chances of your kidneys being overburdened. So antioxidant rich foods. So we have foods that are the grains. The grains are like the holy grail of nutrition. Kale, spinach, anything green that you can think of that is a leafy vegetable, help yourself. Cucumbers, also berries and legumes, beans, seeds. You have granules, cashew nuts, so the nuts, the berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. So these are antioxidants rich foods. These are good foods for the kidney. Okay, this is what you'd want to be eating. A balanced diet, I think we might know what we mean by balanced diets. A diet that consists of the nutrients in the right proportion. So what we usually advise is you have a plate, divide your plate. Half of your plate of the food on your plate should be vegetables. The remaining you could divide into two. A fistful for carbs. That just gives a rough idea of how much carbs you should be eating. So you look at your feast, and then that should be the amount of carbs on your plate. And then the remaining should be proteins. Tofu or awara, as they call it in Nigeria, chicken, fish, all of that. So this gives you an idea of how your plate should look like at meal times. okay, to support the health of your kidney. Limit processed food. I've touched on this before because processed food has a high amount of salt, high amount of saturated fats. To keep processed food not stale, to keep it fresh in quotes, a lot of chemicals have to go into it. So that's why it is shelf stable. It stays on the shelf for a very long time and you can still eat it, which is not supposed to be. Okay. So as much as possible, cut down on your processed foods. And something we do not talk a lot on is bleaching creams. I think it's important to mention it because bleaching is like very common. It's more common than you would imagine. So you have, back then in Nigeria when I was practicing, you'd have even smaller children coming in with kidney problems and ask their mother or their father and ask them about creams that they use. You'll see some of them using very bleaching or whitening creams. Why this is dangerous is that these creams have an insane amount of mercury, lead, all other toxic chemicals in them that wreak havoc on the kidney. So long-term exposure to these chemicals from bleaching creams, they do destroy the kidney. Okay. So as much as possible, you don't want to be having things that are having, you don't want to be using creams that are having hydroquinone, mercury, things that are having those toxic chemicals in them, in the creams that you are using. So this is something to note. Herbal concoctions. In Nigeria, they call it bobonishe. In Yoruba, they call it bobonishe. What that means is that things that they use to treat everything, it works for everything. Okay, why herbal concoctions have a bad effect on the kidney is that most times they are random herbs. This is not to dispute that sometimes the people that put the herbs together know the herbs that are being put and in what quantity they should be put. But it's an unregulated market. You would agree with me, it's an unregulated market. So you have herbs that are high in different chemicals and toxins, and there's no dosage really to the amount of these things that are going in. So people just drink them at random, and this wreaks havoc on the kidneys. Okay, so herbal medications, just be very cautious of this. Another thing I'll talk about is synthetic hair. I know that's a little strange, right? But it's something that is not being spoken enough about. So I say, especially for the ladies, we love our synthetic hair, love your braids, your boho braids or your lemonade braids, whatever style you rock, you really like them. Okay, and it's synthetic hair that is used. The problem with synthetic hair is that it's mainly an unregulated market. I found that hard to believe, but that's what the statistics says. And it has very high levels of formaldehyde, lead. There was a recent study, probably 2 years, 3 years running now. All the top 10 brands of synthetic hair, they tested them, and all of them were found to have nearly 10 times the normal amount of heavy metals. Instead of having maybe a trace or a very tiny amount, they found up to 10 times the amount. So synthetic hair, as much as possible, will tell ladies especially, cut down the use of your synthetic hair. Somehow it can affect your kidneys. Yes. So there are options. Human hair has less chemicals in it. So your human hair extensions, that is preferable. There's also something that's called rebundle, if I'm not mistaken. Rebundle is made from banana fibers. So it is hair extensions, but made from recycled banana fiber. So that can be an option. Also, if you're still using your synthetic hair, you might want to do an ACV rinse. That's an acid cider vinegar rinse. It just removes the surface toxins or surface chemicals. And don't carry your hairstyles for too long. You can't be carrying your braids for 4 months, for 3 months. Keep it short and use your natural hair. Explore natural hairstyles as much as you can. Okay. So this is where I talk about the influence of faith on our kidney health. So we can draw some lessons from Daniel chapter 1. So in Daniel chapter 1, you see Daniel, a child of God, a Jew, taken from his home country. And then he comes to the king's palace. And Daniel chapter 1 tells us about the decision of Daniel to not just eat anything and everything. He demonstrated self-control in that he said, okay, give me vegetables, which brings us back to our vegetables that we've been talking about. Very important. Give me vegetables, give me pulses. Okay. And at the end of 10 days, when they looked at him, he was in a better health. So long before the vegetarian diet started, I can beat my chest and say from the Bible, we can see that there's always been pointing to vegetables and having a clean diet aids our kidney health, aids our health all over. Okay, so the Bible also instructs us that our body is the temple of God. We should deal with it as such. Okay, the temple of God should be taken care of spiritually as well as physically. So this is what God expects of us, to incorporate practices that promote our physical health as well as our spiritual health. That's undisputed. But our physical health needs to be taken seriously because we are stewards of the body that God has graciously given to us. It's a gift, and it's our obligation, it's our duty to maintain it, to see that it's in health as much as lies within our reach. Okay. And if for any reason we do fall ill, faith is something we fall back on. It's something that gives us hope that God is the ultimate healer. Jesus is called in the Bible the great physician. Okay, he's greater than any doctor you'd ever see. And he's able to restore us back to health as we do our own part. If it's medication that is to be taken, whatever is to be done, while holding on to our faith, that helps us in the long run. Okay, and it gives us a positive outlook to life. Gives us a positive outlook to life. In Lamentations, the prophet was saying, he said, "This I recall, and then I have hope." There is God's message that we are not consumed. Okay, so no matter what happens, I think the preceding verses were talking about how bad things were. But finally, the prophet had to remind himself that things will be better because God is with us. Okay, so our faith calls, the onus rests on us as faith-filled people, as believers, that we need to take care of our body, do what we ought to do as stewards. Okay, so there are some practices, especially faith-tied practices, that can help with our kidney health. Sometimes it's not like a very direct link, but I'll explain how it's all tied up together. So meditating on the word, we have to be specific, not just zoning out or humming. No, we're talking about meditating on the word of God as a child of God. What the word of God does to you is that it reduces stress levels. As a Christian, you can bear me witness that when you read the word of God, you feel refreshed. You feel better. You are able to make better choices. You are able to remember God's commandments. Okay, so God's word helps us, reminding us of self-control, which is a fruit of the spirit. So we don't just take up anything and eat and damage our kidneys. We don't just ingest anything we see, or drink alcohol, or do things that might cause havoc to our bodies. Okay, especially to our kidneys in this case. Prayer and fasting is another one. So we all know there's the rave about intermittent fasting. Oh, it does this, it does that. Fasting has been of great health benefits to everyone. Anyone that fasts will tell you, you feel energized. That's first at first. We have to say the truth. At first, it may not seem so. You feel as though you just want to faint or you want to pass out. But with time, as your body gets used to it, you find out that it's something that's very important. Cells are rejuvenated when you fast. Your body goes into a fat burning zone. So it helps with weight loss. Okay. So it just helps your body, gives your body time to rest, to heal. So fasting is an important block of the faith, and it's also an important block of health. So it's good that we engage with these practices. Okay. So you may not do a dry fast, you may not go the whole hog. You can do like maybe a fruit fast in which you just take fruits for a number of days. You might do the dry fast, you might do a water fast in which you just take water for a little while, and then finally you break as the spirit leads. So these are Christian practices that are good, not just for our spiritual wellness for us, but also our physical wellness. Okay. And generally community-led support or community or faith-based health initiatives, such as what we are doing here, education. I remember someone saying that the church is one of the places where you get free resources. You have medical personnel in the church, you have people in banking in the church, you have reverends in the church, people that will give you spiritual advice for free, financial advice for free. So most resources that you get, and no one's going to charge you for all of this. So our faith is very, very important. The support that the faith brings in cases of illness, you have people that are not feeling too well, and then prayers as well that the faith gives you, the church gives you. These are very important things. There are also wellness programs, which I think should be in my church. We do them. Wellness programs like football matches, especially for guys. Women, you can have like maybe a morning exercise group or a Pilates group. Just wellness programs that have to do with moving of the body, exercise, very, very important. The church could also pilot that. Okay, so wellness program in our church, we do football matches, I think every month, if I'm not mistaken. And that's running on the field, that feel good hormones that are released, putting your body under subjection. These are things that are good for our health and as well for our kidneys. Okay, so in summary, nutrition, lifestyle, and faith are intertwined. There's a very important relationship between all of this. Balanced nutrition, as much as possible, eat right. Do the right thing by supporting your kidneys. Say no to alcohol. Say no to things that will damage your kidneys. Eat homemade meals as much as you can. You can batch cook. You don't need to cook every single day, especially if you do live outside of Nigeria. If you are staying in the UK, you could batch cook, or if you live in a place where there's constant power supply, you could batch cook. Homemade meals are very good because you know what's going into them. Has less chemicals. So regular physical activity is another thing, like I've touched on before. The recommended, I think, is about 30 minutes every day for 5 days per week. You could do low impact walking. Doesn't have to be something too stressful. Start from walking. Walk 10 minutes a day. Walk 15 minutes a day. As time goes on, you can incorporate cardio. You can incorporate heat sessions. You can do all of that. Get on a treadmill. Okay. Stress management is also important. Sleep well and have good rest. Okay. And spiritual practices, like I've talked about, that's the fasting, prayer, meditating on the word, self-control when it comes to the things that we ingest, and us being generally cautious about what we eat. So preventive measures would be all that has been mentioned, and then managing underlying conditions. So if you have something like diabetes or high blood pressure, as much as possible, keep this under check. Take your medications, be regular with your medications, be regular with your checkup. Okay, keep a tight control on your glucose and on your blood pressure as much as you can. Okay, so in conclusion, Holistic kidney wellness has many components, which we've all mentioned, and I do hope that we've been able to get a few things from this session. Thank you very much for
Thank you so much, Dr. Glory. That was so insightful and thought provoking. Absolutely amazing. And would love to hear from you, the audience. And if you have any questions about kidney health, diet, faith, or anything that Dr. Gloria shared tonight, please type your questions in or just raise your hands up, and we'll invite you to unmute. The first question I've got for you, Doctor, is from Terry, one of my colleague, who has asked, what are some foods that can be avoided if you have kidney disease?
So generally, in kidney disease, what we would usually advise is limiting high salt food. Okay, so foods that are very high in salt. So you have, I think I did mention cheese. Cheese is quite high in salt. You'd want to limit that. Olives, most times they are salted, apart from the natural salts that they have. You'd want to limit that. Then generally in your cooking, you'd want to limit, or as much as possible, if you can, boil without salt. That's a very important tip that I would want to drop with us. Are you boiling rice? Boil it without salt and then eat it with your sauce. Believe you me, it will still taste as amazing as you would want it to. Are you boiling potatoes? Boil without salt. Are you boiling pasta? Boil without salt. Okay. Another thing would be that you would not want to overburden your kidneys by too much protein. So what we say is that, because remember, if the kidneys are impaired or the kidneys are not really well functioning, they are not able to excrete excess protein. They're not able to break it down as they ought to and excrete it. So that's why you have in kidney patients with kidney disease, you have high creatinine, high urea. Urea is like the byproduct of protein metabolism or protein breakdown. So we'll tell you reduce your protein. But why I'm a little cautious saying that is that generally Africans do not take as much protein as they ought to. Ab initio. So saying reduce your protein, yes, but we need to first get a baseline. How much protein is the person taking? Another thing would be to avoid alcohol. I think that goes without saying. You should have no business with alcohol when you know your kidneys are already, even if your kidneys are perfect, you should have no business with alcohol. Okay, and if you're, and more so, if your kidneys have problems, you should have no business with alcohol.
Awesome. I hope that answered your question, Terry. Audrey, another colleague of mine, great friend, is asking, is it good to fast if on medication for diabetes?
Yeah, so it's quite tricky. Okay. It's quite tricky because usually medication for diabetes is usually taken with meals. But as someone who has relatives with diabetes and patients with diabetes that do fast, what I can say is that if you are going to fast, you might have to omit. First, your blood sugar has to be, your long-term control has to be quite good. HbA1c less than 7, that's a good place to start from. Okay, so you might have to omit your medication, because what happens is that if you are taking blood sugar lowering medication, you can't be taking that without food in your tummy. That can tip you to hypoglycemia, that's low blood sugar, and that has many complications on its own. So what people do is not what the doctor advises. Usually we say take your medication, eat your food. Is that what people do is that they might want to skip Or if they are taking maybe something like metformin that they can take maybe once, they can take a short fasting window, say morning to 12. You fasted for 6 hours, apart from fasting all through the night, you just stretch it a little. And then when you have to take your medication, obviously there would be food in your tummy. You've broken your fast by then. So this is some of the ways people with diabetes do tweak. I have close relatives with diabetes, and that's what they do. They kind of tweak it to get the benefits of fasting while also keeping an eye on their blood sugar. So that can be excluded. Yeah.
Thank you again, Dr. Glory. As a Nigerian, is our local herbs bad for the kidney?
During my practice in Nigeria, we've seen a lot of people with kidney damage, and a significant part of their history is the ingestion of Bobonishe. So as much as possible, from experience, from what I have seen, avoid herbal medication. I'm not saying herbal medication is bad, but the problem with herbal medication is inaccurate dosing. There's no standard dosing to what you are ingesting. And the second part is that you do not know what is the mixture of what you are being given. So you just have a herbal concoction. They say, oh, it works, it does this, it does that. But we cannot really tell. I remember it's really an unregulated market. You can't really sue anybody. You can't really say, oh, this is what's in it, or this is not what's in it. So generally, from a doctor's point of view, I say avoid as much as possible. Avoid herbal medication.
Pam has asked on keeping hydration in my role. I also encourage drinking squash, especially to individuals who do not drink water or those who drink fizzy drinks. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Yes, so I do agree to an extent with you. Squash is not too bad in itself, but like I've said earlier, whatever you're drinking, have a look at the labels. Have a look if you're having something that is looking like a billboard, just detailing the ingredients of what you're taking in, there is a problem. Your ingredient list should be as small as possible. So usually for squash, it's usually just like fruit flavored water, sometimes with some little added flavoring here and there. Even for ill people in the hospital, generally they are encouraged to drink squash if they're having difficulties drinking water. So it's not a bad idea, but I'll still encourage that water by itself, or fruit flavored water, homemade fruit flavored water, is also a very good option. A slice of lemon, dash of lime, some berries, maybe frozen berries. So just keep it tangy, keep it, something nice on the palate. A lot of people have issues drinking water. They find it very boring. So just different ways of spicing things up. And yeah, so squash is not bad at all. But we still go back to water, good old water.
Thank you very much. Anita has said, thank you so much, doctor, for the information. My question is, how much damage to the kidney is a CKD, that's chronic kidney disease, for those who don't know, that's stage 3. So she's asking, what is stage 3 kidney disease? What is that?
Okay, I'm muted.
Yeah.
So CKD3. So what that means is chronic kidney disease 3. Chronic kidney disease is usually staged or classified, if I'll put it that way, and it just tells you how bad the kidneys are. So for CKD3, usually is what we call moderate kidney injury. Okay, so the EGFR, that's the number or the figure for filtration, the estimated glomerular filtration rate, how well the kidneys filter. I think it's something about 50-ish. The EGFR usually will be around that. from around 50-ish, 30 to 50, something like that, depending on what stage. Okay, so for CKD3, it's usually around that. And what we usually advise is what we've said here: lifestyle changes, enough hydration, lifestyle changes, enough hydration, medical treatments. So what is causing the kidneys to have the problem? Is it something treatable? Is it the blood sugar that is not well controlled? Is it the blood pressure that is affecting the kidneys? Is it another chronic illness that is affecting the kidneys? So many things can be affecting the kidneys. The problem might not be directly from the kidney itself. So if you treat those things, in essence, you are treating the kidney disease. So if you manage underlying chronic conditions, what you can do is to prevent it from worsening. The kidney may not recover 100%, but it will not get to end stage renal disease. That's when what can save the person is a dialysis, okay, or a transplant. Dialysis is just for the short term, but the main thing would be a transplant. Yeah. So I hope that's shed some light.
Brilliant stuff. We're going good. We're going well. Apart from Yvonne, so Yvonne Roberts Foster has asked, apart from blood pressure medications, what else can you lower your blood pressure? Yeah. Apart from blood pressure medications, what else can help you lower your blood pressure? That's it. Yeah.
Lowering blood pressure, apart from medication for lowering blood pressure, active lifestyle helps your blood pressure. Okay, so when we talk about that active lifestyle, exercise helps your blood pressure. Eating right, so eating right, like we've mentioned earlier, whole grain diets, less of processed foods, whole grain diets, complex carbs. These are carbohydrates that are not easily broken down, something that can last in the system for a while. So you don't have just very quick spikes of sugar and quick drops of sugar. So you have complex carbohydrates that take a while to digest in the system. Those are very good. Low fat or low dairy products, you can incorporate some of this into your diet. So naturally, that helps you with blood pressure control. Losing of weight. If you are overweight, a better blood control or a better blood pressure regulation can be achieved when you do lose some weight. So generally, I would say a better lifestyle choices, less processed foods, whole grains and vegetables, low fat milk, low fat foods. All of these help naturally to reduce blood pressure. But it's important to state that if you've been diagnosed with blood pressure, in as much as you're taking a natural approach to things, as much as possible, get on your medication in tandem with whatsoever you are doing at home. So you have us attacking it from all.
Asks, how long should we go on dry fasting? And I'm going to add that to next question also is, what is AKI?
So for fasting, for dry fasting, usually we would say it depends. Okay. But generally, people tell you a 3-day dry fast, most people are able to manage that. But what I usually advise, erring on the side of caution, if you are doing a dry fast, at the end of the day, break. People with higher spiritual authority, like pastors, reverends, we have our reverend here. Most times I'm sure that they still go long time without eating. Some people 2 days, some people 3 days dry fasting, and they can tell us that they are still fine. But from a medical point of view, we tell you if you're fasting throughout the day, as much as possible, break. Evening, have a little thing in the tummy. The next day, you can continue again. And yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Doctor. We are very grateful. I've got two quick questions. As an African, we are used to eating eba, amala, fufu, and co. To what extent do the intake of this type of food affect our kidney? Number two, at what time is best? Some take it in the morning, some in the afternoon, some in the evening. What's the best time to have these particular heavy meals?
Thank you, sir. So, our traditional foods, usually on a general note, they are not bad. Where the issue is that the amounts that we take, they're usually calorie dense. What that means is that they have a high amount of calories. And usually you'd see someone eating as if maybe eating a mountain of swallow. You see someone taking a big wrap of swallow. Okay. So most times we'll say African foods, they are lovely. They have high fiber. I know for a fact, Gary does have high fiber in it. Same with fufu. But the issue would be portion control. We would say carbohydrates, like I said earlier, the fist of your hand is just like an approximate amount of the amount of carbs you should be taking in. So food, African foods, but taken in moderate amounts. Moderation is key. Okay. Then another thing I would want to add, as much as possible, if you are eating fufu, if you can make it, it's better. Because what I think BBC did a documentary on that. Fufu nowadays, what people do is that they put in detergent. It's widespread practice. They put in detergent to increase to quicken the fermentation process. Sometimes they put paracetamol as well. So paracetamol and detergent. Detergent is the one that is the main one. And we know that detergents should not be getting into the system. You are stressing your kidneys, you are stressing your liver. So I would just say anyone that eats fufu, it's very lovely. Fufu is very lovely, but the commercial ones that you just buy on the street from the street vendors, as much as possible, do not. And if you do, get from a trusted vendors, because there are some additives they put in, like detergents, that are very harmful to the kidneys. Okay, and I would say the best time for heavy meals is when you are active. So some people have very lazy mornings. That's not when you want to be eating a heap of amala. You can keep your gbegiri for later in the afternoon, when you know shortly after you are taking a walk, or shortly after you are getting on the treadmill, or you are going to the store. So your heavy meals should be centered around the time of the day in which you have most activity. That's what we advise. Heavy meals, mostly in the night, we say no. Because shortly after you are going to sleep, you are not burning any fat, you are not burning any calories. So everything you are taking in just stays, if I put it that way.
On behalf of the Come Let Us family, I just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your gentle but powerful way. You have helped us think about our kidney, our lifestyle, and our faith. You have even mentioned Daniel. And for those who have got faith, know definitely how Daniel was a man of God, and also about his healthy lifestyle. And we're so grateful for the way you served, you taught us, and pour out into our Come Let Us community. And may God continue to strengthen you, enlarge your territory, and bless the work of your hands in Jesus' name. So thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, I want to say have a lovely holiday season. This is our last Come Let Us webinar session for 2025. We look forward to seeing you in 2026, and